Welcome to the deep dive. So today, we're getting into a YouTube video transcript from Rantz. It sort of maps out this web of connections between some big players, stock market, government figures, that kind of thing.
Right.
Think of this as like a quick way to get a handle on these relationships they're talking about and, what they might actually mean.
Yeah, and it's important to remember this is coming from one specific source, this transcript. It's giving us one particular take.
Exactly. You listeners sent us this perspective, and our job is basically to unpack it, see who the key players are, what the alleged links are, and pull out what seems most significant.
Exactly. It's a specific viewpoint on some pretty complicated financial and legal stuff. We're not here to judge if it's, fact or fiction, but to understand the picture being painted.
Right. Understand the narrative.
Yeah, what the creator sees as important. We're just analyzing that perspective.
Okay, so let's dive in. The video kicks off focusing on Apollo Global, big private equity firm. And they just hired Whitney Chatterjee from Sullivan and Cromwell. That's a major New York law firm, long history. She's going to lead their legal team.
And Sullivan and Cromwell, or S&C as you might hear it called, they're not new to the scene at all, like 144 years old.
Wow.
Yeah, the video even digs into their backstory a bit.
Oh, yeah. What's it say?
Well, it points to some pretty deep roots, even suggesting early ties to intelligence figures, like the Dulles brothers, before the CIA was even officially formed.
Huh. So the video's implying they were influential way back.
That's the suggestion, yeah. That this firm has operated at certain levels of influence for a long, long time. It kind of sets the stage for their modern reach.
Okay, that makes sense. So then the video moves on to S&C's more recent work, and this is where you see just how involved they are.
Yeah, the client list is something.
Right. Kraft Heinz, FTX bankruptcy, and yeah, we definitely need to circle back to that one.
Oh, yeah. Big time.
AT&T DirecTV, the Kodak bankruptcy, even that crazy Volkswagen Porsche stock market squeeze.
Right. It really shows they're playing in the major leagues, dealing with these massive corporate events and bankruptcies.
It does. And they also mention S&C's role in the LA Dodgers bankruptcy.
And Apollo was actually a potential bidder in that situation, which is interesting.
Right. So it shows how S&C isn't just like representing companies from afar. They're often right in the middle of these huge financial shakeups and deals.
The video kind of frames them as being deeply embedded with the social elite, as the presenter puts it.
And the list keeps going, doesn't it? Like Bear Stearns, Lehman Brothers.
Fannie Mae, AIG, Wachovia, National City. Basically a roll call from the 2008 financial crisis.
So Sullivan Cromwell seems to pop up consistently in these really critical moments. Okay, so that leads us to Jay Clayton. He's a figure the video puts a lot of weight on.
Yeah, Jay Clayton. His career path, at least as the video lays it out, is kind of exhibit A for the interconnectedness they're talking about.
Okay, so remind us, who is he?
Well, he was the chairman of the SEC, the Securities and Exchange Commission, the top regulator for the stock market.
Right, former SEC chair. And now
he's a director and non-executive chair over at Apollo Global, the private equity firm we mentioned.
Okay, SEC chair to Apollo leadership. Got it.
But wait, there's more. He also works for Sullivan and Cromwell, LLP, the law firm.
Wait, both. Apollo and Sullivan and Cromwell.
Yep. According to the video, he was hired by S&C, left for the SEC job, then joined Apollo, and then S&C hired him again.
Okay, wow. So former top regulator, now leading a firm and working for the law firm that represents that firm, among, tons of others.
Exactly. So the video, understandably, starts asking questions. Could there be influence? Is this the revolving door people talk about?
Yeah, people moving between government regulation and the industries they regulated.
Yeah.
Does Apollo's link with S&C get, stronger or different because their chair is also tied to the law firm?
Right. Those are the questions raised. It naturally brings up potential conflicts of interest or, at least the appearance of one.
The video even throws out the idea that Apollo hired Clayton partly because of the whole Epstein probe fallout around that time.
Suggesting he was brought in maybe as a kind of shield, given his background.
That's the narrative presented, yeah. Adding another layer to why these connections might matter.
Okay, right. So let's zoom in on the FTX bankruptcy now, because this seems to be where the video really ramps up the claims about these connections and potential conflicts.
Definitely. The transcript mentions reporting from someone on Twitter called Meta Lawman, specifically about Sullivan and Cromwell's role in the FTX mess.
And what's the core issue they flag?
The alleged conflict of interest is central. So Sullivan and Cromwell is representing FTX in the bankruptcy case,
Okay.
which means they have access to all of FTX's internal data, finances, operations, everything, deep inside knowledge.
Right.
At the same time, Apollo Global, where Jay Clayton is chair, remember, is reportedly out there trying to buy up claims from FTX creditors.
For pennies on the dollar, as the video puts it. Exactly. For significantly less than they're worth on paper. So the question the video poses is, how can the law firm ethically represent the bankrupt company using all that inside info, while a closely related financial firm, Apollo, is potentially trying to profit from that bankruptcy by buying up the debt cheaply?
Okay, I see the problem. You've got S&C inside FTX, managing the bankruptcy, while Apollo, linked to S&C via Clayton, is potentially on the outside looking to make money off the wreckage. The video screams conflict, basically.
That's the strong suggestion, yes. And it doesn't just stop at the potential conflict. It brings up allegations from Daniel Friedberg. He was FTX's former compliance officer.
Okay, what did he claim?
Well, according to the video's account of Friedberg's claims, S&C supposedly overbilled FTX massively, and that they manipulated the bankruptcy itself to generate more fees for themselves, made false statements, and even helped cover up or enable securities fraud.
Wow, those are really serious accusations.
Extremely serious. If true, it points to a, massive betrayal of trust and abuse of the legal process.
Yeah. The video also claims S&C basically maneuvered to get John Ray appointed as the new CEO of FTX, right?
That's another allegation mentioned, yeah. That they installed him to sort of ensure they stayed in control of the bankruptcy process and the associated fees.
And they mentioned the billing rates, too.
Oh, yeah. Pointed out some really high hourly rates for S&C lawyers on the case, like over $1,000, even $2,000 an hour for some.
Okay, I mean, big bankruptcies often have high legal fees, but
in the context of these allegations about conflicts and manipulation, it definitely adds fuel to the fire, according to the video's perspective.
yeah, it looks worse. Did it mention Ray's view on S&C?
It does note that John Ray, the new CEO, initially supported keeping Sullivan and Cromwell as FTX's lawyers, which, kind of fits the narrative that S&C had positioned themselves effectively early on.
Gotcha. Okay, now let's talk about Ryan Miller. He's another name that comes up. FTX's general counsel.
Right, Ryan Miller. And his background, as presented in the video, adds yet another thread to this whole web.
How so?
So Miller used to work at Sullivan and Cromwell for 8 years as a partner.
Ah, okay. So FTX's top lawyer is an S&C alum.
Yep. But there's another connection the video highlights. Before S&C, Miller was legal counsel for Gary Gensler.
Gary Gensler, the current SEC chairman.
The very same. So you have FTX's general counsel, who used to work at S&C, and also used to work directly for the guy now heading the SEC.
Okay, that is quite a convergence of connections right there.
And the video presenter basically uses this to say, look, the ties go all the way to the top.
Implying that these connections might be why, in their view, nothing significant will happen regarding FTX's collapse.
That's the explicit argument made, yeah. A pretty strong claim about interconnectedness potentially leading to, let's say, a lack of aggressive action or accountability.
And there was even an allegation that Miller specifically pushed FTX into bankruptcy so that S&C could get the business?
That's another one of the claims highlighted in the transcript, yes.
Yeah.
That it was orchestrated for S&C's benefit.
Right. And then the video kind of loops back to the beginning.
Yeah, reminding us that Apollo hired Whitney Chatterjee, the S&C partner, to lead their legal team, reinforcing that Apollo S&C link again.
It keeps coming back to that link. Now, the video does something interesting here. It sort of contrasts FTX with GameStop.
Yeah, it takes a bit of a detour. The presenter seems to suggest that with GameStop, whatever problematic stuff might have been going on was, quote, stopped.
Stopped by who?
By people like Ryan Cohen, and maybe the collective power of retail investors is the implication. It's presented as a sort of counterexample where things didn't necessarily play out badly for the little guy.
Okay, an alternative outcome. But then it pivots again, right, to AMC.
It does, and the view on AMC is much more negative.
Why is that?
The presenter basically says AMC is in trouble because it's allegedly partnered up with these guys, meaning Apollo and the related entities.
Connecting AMC back to the main players they've been discussing.
Exactly. They specifically mention AMC's CEO, Adam Aron, having worked at Apollo previously and being friends with Leon Black, Apollo's former head.
Implying that connection is bad news for AMC investors.
That seems to be the suggestion, yeah. A much more pessimistic take compared to GameStop.
Okay. So if we kind of pull back and look at the whole picture painted by this video,
Mm-hmm.
the central idea, the overarching claim, seems to be that you have this tight network. Private equity like Apollo, big law like Sullivan and Cromwell, figures moving between them and government like Clayton.
Right. A web of connections. And the core argument is that this network might operate in ways that aren't great for regular individual investors.
Especially shown, they argue, in the FTX situation.
Exactly. The FTX bankruptcy serves as the main case study in the video, highlighting all those alleged conflicts of interest, the potential for self-dealing, the revolving door aspects.
Okay, so let's just quickly recap the main threads we pulled from this transcript deep dive.
Sure.
First, the direct links between Apollo Global and Sullivan and Cromwell hiring partners, etc.
Yep. Then Jay Clayton's multiple hats. Former SEC chair, now at Apollo, and affiliated with Sullivan and Cromwell. Raising those influence and revolving door questions.
Right. Then the whole FTX bankruptcy saga.
Yeah.
Big focus there. The alleged conflict with S&C representing FTX, while Apollo, chaired by Clayton, reportedly eyes creditor claims.
Plus those serious allegations from the former FTX compliance officer against S&C overbilling, manipulation, the works.
And finally, Ryan Miller, FTX's general counsel. His past at S&C and, crucially, his prior role working for the current SEC chair, Gary Gensler.
Connections the video suggests run deep and might explain, in their view, certain outcomes or lack thereof.
Definitely. And it's really, too, like we said in the start, to remember this whole conversation, this whole deep dive, is based on the perspective laid out in this specific YouTube video transcript.
Absolutely. It's one narrative, one interpretation of complex events. Our goal was just to unpack that narrative for you.
So, wrapping this up, thinking about everything presented in this source, what questions does it leave you with, about how these big financial players, the regulators, the big law firms interact?
Yeah, what other information or viewpoints might you look for now to build your own picture? It definitely gives you a fair bit to mull over.